All right, Namrata, all good?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Um, Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan LeVault with The Money Spot. I am a sophomore here at VCU, and I'm a psychology major and a music minor.
Hi guys, my name is Namrata, and I'm also here from the Money Spot. I'm a current third-year student here. I'm studying business information systems as well as minoring in HR management.
And we're going to be going over some graduate school information. Can you still see the presentation? Is that sharing good?
Yep. Okay.
All right, Namrata, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so this is our presentation talking about graduate school, and the finance is also involved about that. So one question we want to ask the participants is, what kind of graduate degrees are you all looking to pursue? You can type it in the chat or say it out loud. Okay, while you guys are probably typing, hopefully we can also move on. We're also so this is our outline, the topics we're going to cover. We're talking about the why. Why do you really want to go to grad school? How much it'll cost, cash flow planning, employment, how to afford it. And then we're going to have a discussion right after this presentation. All right, awesome. Someone said in the chat they're looking to pursue cyber and social psychology. That's really cool. Okay, we can head to the next slide, Ryan. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the why. So first you want to consider, why do you want to go to graduate school? Do you have the right reasons? And a couple reasons that could be is because you want an entry-level job that you can't get with your bachelor's degree. It might require more than just a bachelor degree. It can also be for a promotion that you're looking to get, or even a career change. You want to change your path from one career to another. It's a big expense, so you don't want to spend more money on school if it isn't in your best interest. And if you already know what you want to do, and getting a graduate degree is required for that, it will grant you greater employment opportunities. And that's a good idea for grad school. If you're unsure what you want to do, if you're still thinking, oh, maybe, I can go, but I'm not sure exactly what I want to do with it, it's best to have it figured out before you really apply and make that commitment and spend that money for grad school.
So another large thing to think about when considering grad school is the expenses associated with it. Of course, education is very expensive. Grad school also is a little different, whereas in similar ways, it has the application fees, about $70 per school, and think about how many schools you're going to be applying to. Now you're going to have to pay a fee to send the transcripts. There are going to be entrance exam fees, and you're going to think about where your grad school is going to be located. So interview travel expenses, it's not just the expense from getting from point A to point B and living there, which is something to think about, but traveling there to and from, also just for interviews, even before you are even able to get in there. For housing, you need to think about if it's a different type of area, compared to if I've been living, I'm from Northern Virginia. If I've lived in Northern Virginia all my life, how different is the culture and how different is the housing market going to look if for example, if I come down here and live in Richmond, which I am right now. Something else like relocation costs, similarly, and just general living expenses, as I covered. Something else is your job that you might need to have to keep your expenses up. you might need to consider if you're relocating there or not. I believe we're going to cover it jobs a little bit later.
Okay, the next thing we're going to move on to is cash flow planning. And this is a great topic because we cover this in appointments that you can have with the Money Spot with coaches such as Ryan and I. So a big emphasis we like to make is to start that good habit now rather than figuring it out later. So the cash flow is basically your income minus your expenses. So it's what you have minus what you've been spending. And the result of that is your cash flow. A cash flow plan is a short-term plan focused on your long-term goals. It's easier to see what you've been doing now to be able to see what you can do in the future. By knowing what your cash flow looks like now and practicing and keeping track of that, you'll have a better idea of what your financial needs might be like in graduate school if you decide to go there. And like I said, Ryan and I work at the Money Spot where we have appointments based on helping you with your cash flow planning. So if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to definitely make an appointment with us so we can work on that and start those good habits.
So when thinking about your expenses, you need to consider your employment, how much you're going to earn while you're in school and how much you're going to want to earn. Is it going to be on campus or going to be off campus? Some of the on-campus assistantships can be a good option. Sometimes they offer salary or tuition reimbursements, and some graduate schools require these assistantships. Something else, is your job going to offer any other kind of tuition payment or reimbursement if it's not through the school, if it's an off-campus job? These off-campus jobs will likely offer more money, but less flexibility. Whereas an on-campus job, they're going to understand that you're going to be a student there. You should be able to consider your balance for school and work, of course, and how many hours you'll be able to take off for school. And something else to consider is if your job's going to allow you to take off time while you're in school, and if you're at that time is going to be paid or not.
Yeah, so like Brian was talking about tuition reimbursement, but besides tuition reimbursement from an employer, another great way to fund your education can also be grants. And these can usually be research-based grants, but there's also many different types available. For example, underrepresented populations in a field, for example, women in STEM, that's a type of grant as well. So it's best to check with your school for these type of grants first, the school that you might want to apply to, talk with your advisor provided here at VCU, and look at other opportunities from organizations or anywhere else where you can see what type of grant can be best for you. Another one is federal loans. With loans, a lot of students may need to take out student loans to fund their education. And that second point over there talks about buyer bewares. These are some things that we can help you steer away from or just make you aware so that you look out for it when it comes to you. There are private loans which have high interest payments and very strict repayment terms, no forbearance or deferment, and there's no help from federal government during economic crises like the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, credit cards, they have very high interest rates, also strict repayment terms and high default rates. And there's also home equity loans and other type of secured loans where you could possibly lose collateral. So these are just some bewares to keep in mind when you're looking out for how to afford and looking to finance your education.
This other great resource is the student repayment calculator, which is offered through the studentaid.gov website. It's a great resource that allows you to put in specific information about your university and your major. And you can, if you know how much you're going to be taking out as a loan, you can go ahead and put that in there, and it'll give you a bunch of different plans on how to pay it off, whether that be as quickly as possible or as cheap as possible. So, Nimrod, do you have any other information about this you want to share?
Yeah, so this is a great simulator that you can use. If you go onto this website, I'm sure all of you have probably used FAFSA, so you would have an account already. If you use your account, it uses the information that you have and talks about the money that you would want to owe, and then tell you from there what exactly is the best plan for you. You can choose options like I want to pay it off as soon as possible, and based on your choices, it'll tell you exactly what kind of plan might be best for you. And from there, you can also go back to your advisor and talk about it and make the best decision from there. So this is a great resource that's provided. And as Ryan moves on, I'm going to also share that link in the chat.
Great. So another thing through the studentaid.gov website is the FAFSA, which hopefully y'all have heard of and filled out before. The FAFSA opens every year on the 1st of October. So it's been open for about a month now. And there are, if you have not filled it out before or are not sure how to fill it out, there are tutorials and help available to get you through that. So, of course, the FAFSA stands for the free application for federal student aid, and helps, give out college grants for those in need for their education. You can link it to your IRS account, which helps a lot, and gather information for your latest tax returns, any income that you've made, any other income or investments you have. And earlier is better, they say, for filling out the FAFSA, because the priority date is when they cut off, the priority students. So that date is February 1st, I believe. So filling it out before then, you have a better chance for grants and more time to identify funding sources and whatnot. Any questions about that?
If you have any questions at all, you can put them in the chat. I'm looking through those as well.
Great.
So here are some other considerations, when you're thinking about applying and financing grad school. So there are options of full-time versus part-time schooling. Full-time schooling may be better for you if you want to complete your degree faster, if you don't want to prolong that, but part-time may also have better benefits, such as financial stability. It's very dependent on your own situation and what your finances look like and what your timeline looks like. And additionally, there are online programs as well, versus in person. If they're available, or programs near where you already live, and you want to do an online program, it may cut the need for relocation costs and saving money on housing. So those are some great options as well. And finally, consider your eligibility for loan forgiveness. This is being offered as a benefit by employers up to $5,250 annually until 2025. Yeah, I think that's it. Anything else, Ryan? That's it.
For that side, I think we're good. One last thing we can share is our Rams Rainy Day Savings Program that the Money Spot is offering. So basically, we partner with the Virginia Credit Union, and if you create an account with them, you attend a Money Spot appointment with one of the coaches, you meet with a financial counselor, and then you complete an online financial checkup, they will triple your amount of savings in your account. You start with that $50, and then they give you an extra $100 in there, which is great. If anyone's interested, here's our contact information. Nimrod, if you'd like to sign us out, then we can transition into the panel.
Yep, so we're transitioning into the panel, but here's a slide about the Money Spot, where Ryan and I come from. We can take appointments based on your financial goals and needs. If you want to talk about cash flow planning or making your savings goals, or talking about student loans, or paying off debt, there are many options to meet with us. We have virtual appointments this spring and fall. We also have in-person appointments as well at the library. So if you visit our website, we'll definitely be able to help you out there. And also email, Instagram. We post a lot of updates about panels like this. Yeah. think that's it. So I think we're going to move on to the panel now. All right, Ryan.
All right.
Let's,
Would our panelists like to introduce themselves?
yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Williams. I wear a lot of different hats around the university. Currently, I'm a doctoral student in the EDD, or the doctoral program in the School of Education and Leadership. I'm in my second semester, actually. I also currently am the Assistant Director of Student Engagement in the School of Business, Office of Student Engagement. I actually just left my role working in financial aid as a lead financial aid counselor. So a lot of those questions about financial aid in grad school, I can tell you a lot of stories of things I wish I knew. Yeah, I have a lot. So nice to meet everybody.
Hey y'all, I'm Madeline Wagner. I'm also in the School of Education, pursuing my master's in counselor education with a focus in college counseling and student development. So talking to college students is one of my favorite things to do. So I'm excited to be here. I am a part-time student, so I work full-time in the School of Pharmacy in a communications and administrative role. So I have a lot of opinions on getting your job to pay for your grad school.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah. So we're going to start off with some questions for the panelists that we can answer for you, and then we're going to move on to audience questions as well. Okay. Ryan, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So, Nick, you were saying in your introduction that a lot of things you said you wish you'd known. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, honestly, I did grad school on a whim. At first, I was looking at doing an MBA program because I was wanting to do more business side of things, and then I pivoted, said, okay, I want to go more the higher ed route. And I didn't really think about the money in as much detail because in undergrad, I had nothing but loans, really no financial aid. I went to UVA undergrad. And so I knew I didn't want to be in grad school too long. So I was mainly looking at 1-year programs, only applied to 2 different programs, UVA, William and Mary, see where it lands. And if I didn't get into either one, then I would have played a more long-term game. Got into UVA and I literally jumped in 2 weeks after graduating undergrad. And yeah, I really wish I would have known about better strategizing, more of my options. Of like, for example, there aren't any grants in grad school. If you're looking for the free money, some programs may have scholarships. For master's programs, it's tough because it really does depend on the program. VCU, many of their departments tend to have scholarships for their master's programs. But again, it depends on the department 100%. So when you're looking at grad schools, I do recommend asking that question. What scholarships are specifically internal to the school itself that you could apply for? And a lot of it does depend on how long your program, when those scholarships become available. Because I would advise the School of Social Work actually in the Wilder Government and Public Affairs on financial for grad students. I would have a lot of 1-year master's degree students looking for free money. And it's there in the School of Social Work, but they couldn't necessarily apply for it because those applications wouldn't become available until after they had actually graduated. So keeping those things in mind, that's definitely one thing I wish I would have known. And the second thing I would say would be how loan repayment works, because I didn't realize that my loans would go into deferment the moment I'm re-enrolled at least part-time in school. The challenge of that, though, is that as you accumulate more debt, you are having interest. And interest that accrues, once you are no longer in that deferment status, it gets capitalized and added to that principal amount. So you end up paying a whole lot more in the long run. Learn that the hard way. So those are kinds of things those are 2 of the core things I would say. There's many more lessons, but I'm going to shut up for a second. But
yeah, that's some great advice. It's definitely, I think that's what we would like to emphasize, do your research, see what the school you want provides. I mean, going on a whim may be great also. I mean, you're doing great, looks like it. So congratulations to you. But yeah, that's definitely good advice to, do your research of the specific schools, what they offer, and, what fits you the best, for sure. Okay, so yeah, Madeline, I want to ask you, how would you recommend recommend funding a graduate program?
Yeah, I mean, my job is paying for my program, so I'd have to say I'm a little biased toward that option. When I did my undergrad in mass communications and had a little bit of experience working in higher ed, and knew I wanted to continue working in higher ed, but I wasn't sure what that would look like. So I didn't know what kind of graduate degree I wanted to pursue when I graduated undergrad. So I'd heard about the possibility of finding a job that would pay for it. So I just stuck with working at a university and kind of figured out that most universities have those programs built into their benefits where they will pay for you to get a degree, to take classes, whatever that might look like. So the last university I worked at, which I won't mention the name of, only paid for one class a semester after you'd work there for a whole year. That wasn't exactly feasible for completing a master's program. So I was really excited when I was able to get this job at VCU, and VCU will pay for up to 6 credits a semester as soon as you start working. VCU is really big on professional development and furthering your skills in work. So as soon as I figured out how that all worked on the back end, signed up for my master's program. And I think that's a really great option for people who maybe don't know what exactly they want to study. You can kind of, get your foot in the working world first, have a better idea of what your skills are and where your interests lie as you're figuring that out, and it'll help you find options that will pay for that. And then you just kind of have to be patient. Unfortunately, it will take me longer to finish my graduate degree because I'm working full-time and in school part-time, but I think it's definitely worth it to not have the debt coming out of school.
All right, Ryan, you want to go with the next question?
Yeah, sure. I think we can jump back to Nick here. What are some of the unexpected expenses that have arisen during grad school?
Well, 9 times out of 10, a lot of it does depend on your situation. So I'll give 2 different perspectives. In my master's degree, I wasn't necessarily working full time like I am now in my doctoral program. So when I was doing my master's, I did have an internship that was tied and embedded into my program. The funding I would get was limited. So expenses are like living costs, like finding an apartment. And so I didn't think about cost of living outside. I was an RA when I was an undergrad. So my housing was always paid for. So this was the first time I had the big boy apartment and everything like that. I had to incorporate and budget for those kind of expenses. And the thing that I didn't think about was the timing of my search for an off-campus apartment. Because simply if you're a grad student, you really don't want to be around undergrads as much because you may need to study and there's more partying. You'll learn those kind of aspects of what works better for you. I knew that for me, having been an RA and knowing the scene around UVA for undergrads, having been a part of it myself. So yeah, definitely the just budgeting for those just general expenses from groceries to car expenses like gas, parking. By the time I was looking at grad school, because again, I did it on a whim. So pretty much I had 2 weeks between graduating undergrad and starting grad school to figure out where am I going to live? Do I have enough money? I need to save a lot of money, basically eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the next few weeks, try to get all these different things together that I did not plan out in full. So I would definitely say that was the biggest component. But also as you go into grad school, some programs may require or may have different opportunities that come up. Like in my doctoral program, I'm working full time, and like Madeline, VCU is paying for my doctorate in full. The one thing I would note is it is checking the HR policy for those tuition benefits at each university that you're looking at, because some programs may not have all of the expenses fully paid for. Like I had a friend of mine who did the MBA program at VCU, and she worked at VCU. VCU paid for a majority of her cost just based on how the business school MBA program is priced, but it didn't pay for all of it. Whereas School of Education, how the costs are for those classes, they fit perfectly. So I would say that one nuance, just double checking. And that's where definitely reaching out to your financial aid counselor. If you choose a program at VCU, you have a specific financial aid counselor assigned to each of the different schools. Institutions, just reach out to the financial aid office, and they can probably, they can help you figure out some of those details. And I guess the last thing I would think about were just the unexpected. So like maybe like injuries that come up, like hospital bills, things like, insurance. You want to have insurance. I mean, that's the benefit of working while you're in grad school, is that usually your employer will have insurance tied into it, especially if you are working for an institution. So if you could find, a full-time or part-time job that offers those kind of fringe benefits, that's going to save you a whole lot of money that you have to really think about. Because for some insurance plans, once you turn 26, you're no longer on your parents. So you have to think about those kind of, I call them the adult expenses or real life expenses. Yeah, those are the kind of things that came up for me.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, one of the things we talk about in Money Spot appointments is creating and maintaining an emergency, like an emergency savings fund, and that can be really helpful for those, emergency hospital visits and such. And you talking about, like groceries and parking. So I think it's great that we get to, have this type of panel to talk with people who've had those experiences and who know what it's like. So Madeline, talking about experiences, tell us about your experience with balancing working in school. How did that work for you, and what didn't work for you?
Yeah, well, I'm right in the middle of it, so I don't know how well I can answer what doesn't work, because everything's working so far. But I will say it's a lot easier to be getting a degree at the place where I work than it might be in another situation. Like if I were working to supplement my school and they weren't connected, because VCU does have kind of this language written into their benefits that if you are on top of your work and you are wrapping things up in a timely manner, then you can also work on schoolwork. Or if you have a class that overlaps with your work time, you don't need to make that time up if you're still on top of your work. So that has been a huge help in just jumping back into school after taking a bit of a break, and kind of navigating what it looks like to do homework again and read a textbook and things like that I know most of y'all are right in the middle of, but I hadn't done in a little while. So it took me a little more time to kind of get back into. I will say that being upfront is a good solution if you aren't in that kind of situation where your job is who's paying for your school and they have a mutually beneficial agreement. Being honest with your employer about what you need, and being honest with yourself about, I need to read this chapter in this textbook. Let me set aside this amount of time. And if it doesn't get done in that amount of time, I need to kind of rework the way that I'm doing this assignment. I try really hard to work from the standpoint of, I'm fitting school into my life, not my life into school. So while it's important and it's a goal that I'm working toward, to achieve this degree, it's not the most important thing. And I, still need to balance, spending time with my community and all the other things that are important to me. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, but those are some things that come to mind for me.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you. We did have a question that kind of ties into that. Someone was asking, someone who also has a degree in mass communications is currently looking for a job that will sponsor their master's program. They asked, can you please go further into how to find a position that helps pay for graduate school?
I can comment on that just a little more. I did jot down a couple things as I was thinking through, are there other jobs that will pay for grad school? So obviously if you work in higher ed, more than likely they'll pay for it. But I also, when I was in undergrad, had friends in accounting who their job would pay for a master's. And then I have friends now who are working in public health who I don't know exactly what their positions are, but their jobs will pay for those master's programs as well. So I think you just have to have that confidence to ask that question. If you're not in a job that it's explicitly saying, hey, we'll pay for your master's or whatever graduate degree you may be pursuing. Mass communications is a little harder from what I've seen. If you're trying to pursue a master's in mass communications, I'm not familiar with jobs that will pay for that. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity in higher ed.
So I'm going to share this that I think might help. So I completely agree with Madeline. It does depend on the employer. I highly recommend everybody to always get a LinkedIn and then pose that question to their network. Your network is literally your net worth. And if you don't know, I guarantee somebody in your network will know. And you'll be surprised that when you post something like that on social media, you'll find a lot of people are willing to help. Like the other day I posted, I'm working on some research about transfer students and trying to create, more spaces of belonging for transfer students. Pose the question, I'm having so many responses in less than 30 minutes of just, people sharing their experiences and things like that. So people are willing to help when you post that kind of question on social media, especially LinkedIn now more than ever. Two, so a really good friend of mine, I currently run a podcast that's designed to called Black Kings Connect, that's designed to create a space to present the Black experience from multiple different perspectives and to really break that cycle or the concept that Blackness is monolithic. My marketing director, who I hired in, he is actually doing his master's in marketing right now at William & Mary. So when he went into the program, he didn't have any of the free funding. He had, he also works in real estate. So he's been paying out of pocket. And when you're in real estate, it's, your income can fluctuate like crazy. So he's getting to his wits end, with schoolwork and then trying to, get the money that he needs while working and selling houses, pay for school. And what he did, he set up a conversation with the dean and laid out, this is the value proposition that I've added to the program in my time here. I'm almost done graduating. This is where my GPA is. This is how well I'm doing. Is there any free money, any scholarships that the school has that can help me get to the finish line? After about a month of a lot of conversations and a lot of patience from his end, they were able to find some money to help him finish up. And so even if you don't find that free money from the get-go, I would say definitely talk to the school and have those conversations, build that relationship, but also understand your value proposition. The one thing you have to understand when you enter into grad school, and I tell people this so that they can approach it more effectively, that I wish I would have known from the get-go. You want to approach grad school like you're a small business, okay? Approach it like you're an entrepreneur. What you're doing, you're cultivating and you're building your brand. But at the same time, you're adding value to the specific program and helping them build theirs. So everything you do along the way, as you're building that value proposition, you also want to go to the standpoint that as I'm adding value to this environment, I need help to continue to build that, that value and present it in that way. That way you can get the most, or what I call the return on investment for your experience, for your time. And when you present it to the school, you never know what kind of funding is going to come through. In financial aid, we could tell you from, our pools what's exhausted and what's not, but you never know what may come up from an alumni or a donor or things of that nature. And I always tell my students that the person who asks, even if the answer is no, they're the ones that are usually the most considered for those random moments or those random funding sources that come out of nowhere. So always ask the question, but also remember your value and present it. I would think literally my buddy Greg was, over like a year and a half because the program's 2 years, over a year, he was just making sure he compiled a list of the things he was doing, whether it was volunteering for admissions events for the program, whether it was different, things he was doing branding wise, taking what he was learning in the program and applying it elsewhere. He was building that value proposition list. So when he went to the dean, he could list out all the things that he did and have the proof to back it up. And that's why he was able to get funding to help him finish up his school. So yeah, I hope that helps somebody, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great response for sure. I got another question sent to me privately. So someone asked, did you go straight from undergrad to grad school or did you take some time off? And what are some pros and cons? And I know Nick touched on that. So Nick, I know you went straight into that. So if you could speak on your pros and cons, and then we can hear from Madeline as well about what she did and the pros and cons as well.
Sure. So yeah, from undergrad to my master's, I went straight through. Like I said, I had 2 weeks in between my bachelor's and my master's. I would say doing that, it does depend on the person. The one thing that I wish I would have done is actually saw where is really checked myself a bit on where I was mentally and emotionally. Because honestly, when you do grad school, it's going to require a different amount of things from you emotionally and physically. You're going to have to say no to more things when it comes to all the social aspects, because for certain weeks you have to prioritize your schoolwork in order to get it done and graduate, because the standards for graduating from degree programs, especially for master's and doctorate programs, is typically you can't get less than a B. And you can feel that kind of pressure to do well, and you're going to have to always have the negotiating. So I personally, if I could have done things over, I wouldn't have rushed into grad school. I would have thought through more of the emotional aspect. What am I willing to invest into the journey? So because of that experience, I actually went through my master's program. I graduated at a good GPA, but I was already burnt out from undergrad. And I, just carried that burnt out nature into my master's program, to where when I was sitting back and thinking the other day of like, what did I write in my master's program? I couldn't remember that full experience. All I remember, it was just a rush. And it's because I was going from burnt out moment to burnt out moment. And so by the time I finished my master's, I was exhausted. I didn't want to think about school, look at any papers. Everybody's like, you're young, just keep going, get your PhD, let's go ahead and get that out the way. You won't want to do it as you get older when you have kids. And I said, no, I'm tired. So what I did for the doctorate program about a month before, I actually decided to do something different, where I set a self-care plan. I thought about what are the things that I need to do for me to feel whole. What are the interventions I can enact whenever I get to those moments when I'm drained, or when I'm tired, when I really lose motivation to do the work? What can I do to make sure that I am 100% whole in the middle of the program? Because doctorate programs, you think master's degrees, they actually, depending on the program, they let you like get slowly accustomed. Doctorate degrees, you come in for 2 weeks and they drop you into the deep end. And so that self-care plan has helped so far. So I literally get a massage once a month. I made that financial investment. I also, set personal boundaries with myself and also with family and friends, so they know, when I'm ready to be present and when I can't, when I really may just need time, maybe not for my school, but really just for me to just rejuvenate myself and really not speak to anybody for like a day or so, because I wear so many different hats, to where I'm constantly outpouring. So I call myself an ambivert. So I do need to have those moments to rejuvenate my mental, emotional, and spiritual energies. And so those are things I've learned doing it 2 different ways. Would not recommend the rushing part. Always have a plan. Even if you don't follow that plan, at least you thought through the pros and cons. But the benefit is, yes, I did finish my master's, my bachelor's and master's in 5 years. 5 years later, I'm doing my doctorate, which I'll be done in May 2024. And yeah.
I love the self-care plan. I love that. It sounds kind of woo-woo maybe, but it's so beneficial to just put that on paper that you are going to take that care of yourself. Just wanted to say that before I say my piece about my master's. But I was trying to think while you were talking, Nick, I think it was a full 2 years between finishing my undergrad and starting my master's program. And a large part of that is really twofold: not wanting to pay for it or not wanting to have to pay a whole lot for it, and not wanting to be more burnt out, wanting that break. to make sure that I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't change what I wanted to do. It did take me a little while to find what exact program I wanted, but my one of my reasons for taking that break was to make sure that I wasn't going to go get this degree and not use it, and not have it be something that I actually wanted to use. So I highly recommend taking a break for those reasons. And then also just gaining more real world experience. It's very hard to quantify how valuable that is. I had an internship for 3 of my 4 years of undergrad, and it was real world experience, but it's different when you are full-time and you're out there adulting and you're on your own and you don't have school kind of making you have a schedule. You're just working your job and you're figuring out how to make friends as an adult and doing all those things. It is different. And so I think it was really valuable to have the time to do that and kind of figure out what I wanted my life to look like, and then go back and add school into that. And then it also obviously helped that I found a job. I was really intentional about finding a job that would help me pay for it so that I wouldn't have as much financial stress. And it also gave me time to save for the pieces of it that I knew my job wouldn't pay for, like books and unexpected expenses, like we talked about earlier. So I'm very pro taking a break. But like Nick said at the beginning of his answer, it definitely depends on the person. Like my husband, for example, is going into, I believe, year 9 of school. So he's just gone straight through, and that makes the most sense for him. Because of kind of our life goals and the degree path he's on. So it does really depend, but I am very pro taking a break when you know you need one.
And actually, I wanted to add in, Matt, you just made me think about something. The one thing, especially nowadays, first and foremost, thank God for the pandemic in this aspect for grad school, because many programs are no longer requiring GRE. For GRE, it depends on the program, but I'll ask that question if they truly require. Because I remember when I was in the middle of applying for my doctorate, I was literally studying with a friend of mine for the GRE. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen geometry and all this stuff in so long, and I was stressing about it. I was an English major undergrad, so like the English literature stuff, like half the test I'm good on. It's the math part. And I was stressing. I'm like, oh Lord, I don't want to pay $200 and then fail this GRE and then have to take it all over again. And then that's when the School of Ed said that they're no longer requiring it. If you've taken it, they'll take those scores, but they're not requiring it. They're creating a more holistic approach. And honestly, a lot of programs have been waiting to make that kind of move because it increases their chances of getting more people looking at their degree programs. The one thing I would also recommend asking is, I do think working while you're in a degree program, it does add a whole different level of experience. Because the challenge with the market today is that they want you to have like 5 years postgraduate work experience or things like that, plus the degree, which will take X number of years. But now a lot of entities are also looking at experience you get while in grad school. So if you're able to work while you're in school, that's great. The one thing you want to make sure with the specific program you're looking at is if it's designed for the working professional. Because the workload is what's going to determine your ability to persist and also feel like you can succeed. That's the one thing when I was looking at, I've had friends, for example, that were nurses doing, master's and doctoral degrees, and those programs explicitly told them you cannot work full time or really work while you're in these programs, because some programs, some master's degrees like social work, may require like a practicum or an internship that will take up a lot of your time. Again, it does depend on the person. When I was in my master's degree, I had my internship, but I was doing 2 other ones at the same time. One was paid and 2 were unpaid, but that gave me a plethora of experience, which allowed me to get into the position that I'm in. So again, it does depend on the person, what their goals are. I know mine are to become president of a university. So I know I needed to cultivate as many different, meaningful touch points as possible. But also the benefit of working while you're in school is that you're able to network effectively and showcase your skill sets. The reason why I got my first job out of my master's with literally a failed job search was because of I did a lot of networking. I went to as many different events as possible. That's why I did the second internship that I ended up doing. My boss at the time in that internship was actually the wife of the director of financial aid. And he saw my resume because he already knew me. You know, he told me to apply for that position that he had ready for me. And I got it. And so really, you know, grad school, the benefit of grad school is that you really do have access to a great network. So just, I mean, I do recommend working while you're in school, but you want to check to make sure the program that you enter into, if it accommodates that kind of lifestyle. But again, you want to set boundaries with family and friends, because the challenging part you're going to see in grad school, depending on how long it is you're going to have to say no to more things than you would want to. And then also when you're looking at locations, you know, does it accommodate the kind of social life you're looking for? Charlottesville, Virginia for a grad student is not great compared to undergrad. There's really not as much going on because there's not much of a young professional atmosphere. Whereas maybe like Charlotte, North Carolina is a great city for young professionals. Or even Richmond's a great city because of it's in a major city of the capital. So thinking about those kind of components also will help you know if not just the university, but the atmosphere will be the most conducive to your learning style, to your learning process, and just really to your overall, you know, pursuit.
Thank you for that. Fantastic. Another question we have asked here, you know, you guys have kind of been tying into how the differences between undergrad and graduate school. What has been the biggest difference you think between the two?
No busy work. I was so excited. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I got to grad school. It's like, wow, all of these assignments actually matter to what I'm doing, which isn't to say that all my undergrad assignments didn't, but there were a lot of things in undergrad where I was like, this isn't relevant. And hopefully that's not the case for y'all, but that's certainly not been the case in grad school. Everything that we're assigned, that I've seen assigned at least, has been relevant to my learning and what I'm going to be doing after my program. So
I would say, honestly, you end up managing more expectations in grad school. In undergrad, you know, professors assume that you don't really know much or don't have the foundations. So they're a little bit, it depends on the professor. You also usually get to choose the professor in undergrad or what class. Like I would go and rate my professor all the time and pick the section with the particular professor that has the best rating. Because, you know, I think about my own engagement. Whereas in master's and doctoral degrees, really in grad school, you don't have as much of the flexibility of choosing the specific professor, you know, or the class topic. It's all tied into the program. But also they each have varying expectations. Like I remember I had a professor in my master's degree who she expected us to actually read everything that she assigned. I was an teenager. And I hope I would have done all the reading, and I didn't. Just didn't have time or didn't feel like it. But I was a good skimmer. I was failing that class in grad school in my last semester, and she really called me out. And that's the one thing you will find in grad school is that because your cohort or your program will have a smaller number of people in the group, or in the classes per se, your professors are really going to treat you like colleagues. And so they're going to often be frank when they feel like you can perform better. They're going to push you to be your best. And the more you offer them, the more information you give them, the more they can help. Whether it's to provide career advice, whether it's to provide networking or job opportunities, and even advocate for you, maybe for funding. So that's the one big difference I found with grad school. It is you really do feel more supported, but really it is even more so on you to engage in those kind of opportunities while you're in grad school with your professors, especially because they really do have an open door and they're really there to support you. But again, it does depend on the professor. Not all professors are the same in each degree program, but if you have that professor that really is engaging and has that kind of open door, take advantage of that. It's really, really valuable.
I was going to add that too, going back to that networking piece, your cohort are going to be your colleagues when you are done. Like you're going to be all working in either the same or very similar field if you finish the program. So definitely keep that in mind if you pursue a grad program, that like you should really be working on building those friendships and also keeping in mind that you can all help each other. And that's kind of your responsibility, you know, as you're going through the cohort in the same school together. You should not compete necessarily, but help each other and coordinate to help each other be the best in whatever field you're pursuing.
And especially with you being in a cohort too, that's a networking opportunity. Like in my doctoral program, I sit with the VP of Budget and Finance of VSU. I sit with directors of the FBI. It's like you get around a lot of great people that could open doors for opportunities because you get to know them on a personal level as a colleague. So you think about just how you are as a professional. Just keep that in mind as you're in grad programs, because that's sort of the overall or the hidden rule or expectation while you're in the programs.
Definitely, those are amazing points. It's definitely good to know that, you know, you can build those relationships and network, and they might, you know, get you your next job, or, you know, you never know what could happen. So that brings us to the end of our panel today, actually, our panel presentation. Ryan and I definitely want to say thank you to Nick and Madeline for, you know, providing your experiences and giving our audience a lot of advice and what to do's, what not to do's, and how it felt for you guys. So a big thank you from us, and thank you to our audience as well. Ryan, anything else to add?
If you'd like to, you know, if anyone else has any other questions, they can drop those real fast. If not, you know, we're from the Money Spot. You can come talk to us. You can schedule appointments with us on Navigate if you have any specific questions or you'd like to talk to us further. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.